Hello, I'm back with another video, and I feel inspired for this one. This is going to be my most uh, uh, bold and daring topic to this point. I want to before I start the video, I want to just say a couple of things. Uh, I had mentioned in another video about how sometimes when we are thrust or we accept a role of some form of service with to a broader community, aspects of ourselves as human beings, higher and maybe even lower dimensions of ourselves, I think can be activated where we maybe have some skills and abilities that we would not have under other or regular circumstances. So just as a piece of testimony, I created this channel about maybe 2 weeks ago or so, a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, and my comfort with talking in front of the camera, but then also my inspiration for the videos, and I think maybe the cadence of my voice are improving, and I think that's an outcome of both the consistency, but also the role of stepping up in bearing my understanding of truths that I've experienced for the purpose of inspiration and edification of other human beings, but in for this channel, more specifically artists. Um, I can't say that I've made all the best steps to become an artist and a songwriter, but I have taken some authentic steps that have cost me on different levels, and I think that in order to develop and become an artistic person, and I think that I only bring that up to say that I think that when we endeavor to do something and we take honest steps towards that goal, whether or not those are the most effective steps, if they are coming from a place of authenticity and they are inspired with our full effort and our genuine intention, I think that we can initiate a momentum and also cycles within our life, but also within ourselves, that move towards that direction. So I think that in me aspiring to be an artist, um, uh, the topics that I'm bringing up on this video, and my the ideas and insights that dawn on me as I'm seeking to express myself, can in one way or another come around to the purpose of becoming a better songwriter. And that's not all entirely conscious or intentional, but I think it's just a reflection of honest motions in a certain direction. So I say that to say that this next topic is it can be on the surface, it may or may not be apparent of having anything to do with songwriting and creativity, but I think that maybe you can feel where I'm coming from, and then I'm also going to do my best to verbalize how I think it has anything to do with songwriting. Um, so, and before I start, because of the gravity and the scope of this next topic, I've done my best to make this channel free uh, of religious or spiritual associations. Just because, for one, I'm not competent to speak in those terms. But two, I want to make it as inspirational and general as I can, so that I can uh, reach broader audiences, and hopefully collaborate and share inspiration with people from different walks of life than myself, and be as equitable and tempered, or as sober as I can, and just be general and speak with humility. At the same time, this next topic is so it is so sensitive. It is so encompassing, and it is so vital, that I'm going to first acknowledge and revere the spirit of life that I think we have all came here in, which is in maybe just a very this is not a comprehensive statement, but just coming for inspiration, I would say my understanding of the spirit of life and our purpose and destiny on this earth is to gain and experience lessons in love, joy, freedom, and understanding. So that's where I'm coming from, and I want to genuflect and bow before life and truth, and I want to submit these statements in that spirit and free of conceit, deceit, or pride. So I want to share some now with all these videos that I've been making. I haven't been putting a lot of thought into what the topic is going to be until about to short, not long before I actually begin the video. And so, but somehow the last couple of weeks I've been getting very clear inspiration for a specific topic, and I'm thinking that the spontaneity of that, I'm thinking that perhaps it can speak to the broader human experience in a timely sense that is greater than my own understanding, but simply the fact that I'm feeling it on a very honest level. I'm hoping that it can maybe pertain to a broader community in a timely fashion. So I hope that this can land home at the appropriate time. But I want to discuss the issue of violence. I'm going to be speaking more so about some of my understanding and experience of violence as an African American man. But I think that a lot of these issues, the subject matter and the realities are very broad and could touch upon anyone from any background in any region of the earth. And it has a bearing on songwriting because one, we see in the media that violence is proliferating within and around the genre of hip hop, and then I think that hip hop itself is I almost want to say like a movement within humanity that is greater than anyone's conscious direction. So I would say that we have been blessed with the appearance of hip hop in the human condition as inspiration and creativity and self-expression, especially as that has been a means for maybe artists with less access to instruments and instruction that can be costly to really share and express their abilities and talents with the most with the most humble equipment and means, which is really the essence and the spirit of creativity in hip hop, in my opinion. But then with that, it's so influential and powerful and beautiful that many other genres are inspired and derive influences from hip hop. But with hip hop and so hip hop is in my understanding is an American phenomenon. I think that what hip hop is what we know of as hip hop emerged in, like, I think the New York City area, but the phenomenon of young people creating original sound and inspirational music, and then also creating trends that are contagious and that are both local and broad, and are developed locally and broadly. I think that might be older than the first recognized appearance in New York City of the youth having like trends and styles that are really kind of like cutting edge and original. So I would say maybe the phenomenon and the essence of what we know of it as hip hop may be much more older and ancient than the current iteration or expression, but still paying homage to the pioneers in the New York City area in the I think like the late 70s and 80s as it came on the scene. But to say that much is to say that the some of the traces of hip hop as we know it can be derived to the United States, and the United States has a deeply violent history. I don't have to. I don't think I have to really go into that. Us as human beings, we have a very violent history on this earth. But America is a probably a quintessential example of violence on so many levels, and I think that one thing I'll say about violence is that I was working as I was working in a role of leadership and authority with youth within the last year or two, and I was at a high school. And a fight broke out between two female students. Two nice-looking female. I don't mean that in an inappropriate way, but just two healthy, nice-looking female students that you wouldn't necessarily consider to be fighters. And I don't think that they necessarily had any training or background with fighting. But when these two girls engaged in fighting, and then the kind of melee that took place around them, there's something so awesome, dynamic, fierce, and rapid about the onset of violence. It is truly it's like a chemical. If you could imagine, if you could actually witness what a chemical reaction looked like, the complexity, the relationships, the dynamism, dynamics or dynamicism. I'm not sure the word I'm looking for there. But it's the same with human beings when human beings engage in violence, and I think that's true both physically, socially, culturally, and even spiritually. There are so many dynamic variables that come into play rapidly, vitally, and consequentially when people engage in violence, or even when circumstances hint at violence or surround violence. So, with that being said, I don't claim any expertise or any competence to speak about the broad implications and realities that surround violence. But so all I'm trying to do with this video is to speak openly about something that was on my heart today. But then in doing so, I'm hoping that by being open and honest, I can inspire awareness about violence, and in being aware. Sometimes when we're aware of ourselves and our behaviors, that's the first step to addressing it and transcending it. So with that, I want to say that I don't dare to have judgment or condemnation for any person who may live a lifestyle that necessarily that invokes violence, that necessitates violence, or that borders violence. There are all kinds of lifestyles and situations that I have not experienced and that I'm not competent to speak on. So I want to stand down from making moral judgments on any person that has experienced or that employs violence. And again, that sounds like that's a little bit. I'm just trying to speak respectfully on this subject and say that I don't cast any moral judgment on people's situations that I don't understand. But I have experienced some violence in my life. I've been a victim of violence at different times. I think that if I'm going to speak honestly and with perspective, I think that I was on one degree or another, I had been careless to place myself in those situations. But I want to say that going back to the United States, so I think that violence is it's kind of like a regulator, a regulator in human affairs. It is a it has a cohesive mechanism in human social or social power arrangements and social structure. So it both holds social structure, but then it also vitalizes and shifts social structure around so that our social relationships are never permanently static, and they're never completely out of control. That violence kind of it reigns in keeps things in check, kind of like and then with that there's also like a moral component where I think that you cannot completely separate violence from moral implications, and you also cannot separate moral implications from violence. Where when a person invokes violence, there are certain moral implications that are invoked that amount to repercussions. Social, more so I want to say social, but then obviously the physical repercussions of violence. And then in the event that a person is maybe furtive, or the violence is not recognized or detected on the broader social scale, just the act of witnessing violence, even from a perpetrator, there's a moral or the journalist Chris Hedges, who is a renowned former war correspondent who has written about different issues surrounding violence and conflict. I believe it was him that once said that for sometimes people who perpetrate violence, there's a moral injury that they receive by witnessing their own acts of violence, and a injury to the conscience that stays with them. I've said as much to say that there are always moral repercussions to violence, whether or not the violence is detected and prosecuted from a formal or a social body. And so I think that violence is it's very it's attendant of the human condition, and I think it's probably always been with us, and on a certain level it may always be with us. You can always imagine that at any point in the future there'll be children in school getting into fistfights if they haven't been educated and inspired to be better than that. I'm not saying we can't get to a place where that's not a reality, and I'm hoping that conversations like I'm introducing with this video might be a first step in inclining towards that direction. But I wanted to say that violence has probably always been with us. But in America, some of the economic realities that of our history are such that violence has really been it has been primed and sustained in a very prominent way in American history. And if you look at if you look at ants, ants have like a ants and bees, they have like a very sophisticated structure to their social arrangements, and their the way that they garner and conserve resources. There's almost like a higher understanding that they have within them that conforms to like a strict social order. And I want to say that that's actually maybe an example of some of the more subtle or sublime aspects of culture in different creatures. So I want to suggest that us as human beings, we have our overt culture, like our style of dress and clothes and speech and stuff like that, that's on the surface. But then I want to say that we have a deeper culture that runs through our minds and probably all of the aspects of us as human beings, where we can sometimes conform to and perpetuate cultural relationships, power arrangements, and ways of living unconsciously that reflect experiences of our ancestors. So where we carry on the structure of the society in an unconscious way. So I want to suggest that a lot of the violence in America, um, it's it's a ever present fact. But I would say that when most people are in there, there's so many ways that violence can be perpetrated against a person, and actually some of the most vicious and deadly forms of violence are way more subtle than what we think of, like such as the some of the food and the medicine that we consume that is really uh, um, uh, um, unhealthy, and it's and the people who manufacture it and advertise it know it's unhealthy, and they're doing it for profit or whatever reason. But the effects of this can be as pernicious and deadly as any overt act of violence. But when we go out in public, there's so many ways that violence can be perpetrated against a person. But I would say the most people, and me as an African American, the what resonates in the subconscious of our mind would be the potential for gun conflict, for firearms. And I want to suggest that perhaps the propensity for the application of the firearm in the United States is a residual perpetuation of the whip in the time of slavery, where a whip could the threat of the whip was ever present, and it could be administered rapidly, instantly, and cause severe pain and agony, potentially to the point of death. Just like a firearm, where a firearm can employ rapid, immediate, and severe pain that may or may not cause death, but the threat and the potential of it is there. And going beyond that, like we think about the theme and the presence of the whip during the time of slavery. But then with that, there's something, if we're speaking honestly and as adults, I would say that most adults and I'm getting a little bit if you'll give me the license with this in the greater spirit of this conversation. Most people had probably at one time or another thought that the whip the all I'm going to say is that as brutal as the history of the whip is, when people are maybe in their private bedroom and like role playing, the whip has a certain aesthetic and almost like a sex appeal of a whip inside of a bedroom. Now, I want to say that the same might actually be true outside of the bedroom, where the firearm, which is maybe a symbol of the whip, it has the same aura and almost sexiness outside of the bedroom, like when people are brandishing firearms or making art that is portraying firearms. Just the way that it can administer rapid, instant, and permanent consequences. There's something that's very powerful about that, and there's a relationship between power and sexuality. And as humans, we resonate deeply with things that are powerful and have a certain appeal, even a dark appeal. So what I want to say is that potentially the firearm has become we have personal issues and dilemmas, and then these actually can become collective personal and issues and dilemmas. So what I want to say is that perhaps this the focus and the preoccupation with the firearm has become a national and now global fetish. So that also plays into the violence that we see. So you have the perpetuation of the power relationships from slavery, and the application of the whip, which I think is being replicated unconsciously in the brandishing and preoccupation with the firearm. Then you also have the dark appeal of it in terms of the power and the permanence of it. And then these are just some general reflections that I have, and this is by no means comprehensive of the issue. But what I want to say is that a lot of us, we're aware of issues of violence, and I think it's seldom that we actually have any insight into what could actually be an approach to go forward and maybe make things better. I don't know that we'll ever be able to solve the issue completely, but I think that we can maybe take steps to shift the trend in the sway, so that we can maybe approach a more sublime and equitable trend overall. So there were more things that I wanted to say with this video, but it's getting a little bit long, and my train of consciousness is dissipating a little bit. So I want to bring it to a close to keep keep the value of the words that I've already stated to this point. But the last thing that I'll say is that just as far as like maybe a way of moving forward for us as a people and all of us on the earth, but I guess I'm speaking as an African American now. There's a movie called Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and it'd take a while to break it down, but the idea is I read that a lot of people hear that word Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon and watch the movie and enjoy the movie and have no idea what it is. And I can't quote the source, I can't remember where I read it, but I understand that Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is a idiom in Chinese culture, and you can't understand this. You can't logically understand the expression, but what it communicates is the experience in reality, in maybe in allegory and literature, but maybe also in reality of having actual authentic masters of some kind living amongst us and being undetected by their appearance and their common appearance, but actually retaining and bearing the abilities of their training and their skill and their experiences. So in this movie, you have a master of sorts who has developed proficiency and a deep connection with a particular sword that was crafted with expert craftsmanship, and he's had different experiences with that sword in very bloody and costly experiences as a martial artist. But he's presented as a righteous person. But still, even though he was employing the sword righteously, the weight of the sword and the blood that's been spilt by it is heavy on him. And at this point in his life, he was close to reaching the point of enlightenment, but he had an attachment to a woman that was a former lover of his comrade who fell in battle, and he still has feelings for her, but there's a prohibition on them coming together because of the history and the honor of their martial arts background. But to say as much, he's trying to put the sword down and walk away from it, and he's trying to rekindle something with this woman, and but in him putting the sword down, he gave the sword over to a wealthy patron and influential person in the area who was competent to house the sword and in a spirit in a place of honor. But then the sword is recognized by a rogue martial artist who has a rogue teacher who's a Ronin and a outlaw, and the pair of them they emerge because the younger disciple of the Ronin has recognized and coveted the appeal of the sword and the power of it. So what the film is portraying is these cycles of violence, of where this sword, in all of its awesomeness, somehow it's very difficult to put it down and to stop the cycle of violence, because the cycle of violence is deeply connected with the sword. And that goes a little bit broader into some of these issues of violence, where I think that violence, all of our actions as human beings, but especially violence, is very cyclical. Once it's been once it's has transpired, there are many cyclical implications, and that's just an aside in the movie, but it's a powerful message concerning violence. And in this video, I'm making a loose analogy between that sword and the firearm in America as a very powerful and deadly weapon that is implicated in cycles of violence. But the reason I'm bringing up that film is because there's one scene in that film. It's a very artistic portrayal of this righteous master and this young talented disciple of a Ronin, who he has recognized as having a great potential, and he actually wants to impart some of his skill and his training to the young disciple, because he can recognize her talent and her ability, but he can also see that there's a certain level that she may not actually be able to realize without some of the deeper understandings of the training that he possesses. But there's one point where they're kind of they're artistically traveling through the forest, and then he gets to a point like on a waterfall, and she wants the sword, and he has actually developed a level of detachment from it. And then in another video about the guitar, I mentioned that there's a profound relationship between familiarity with an instrument, but also detachment from an instrument that is implicated and demonstrated in mastery. I speak about that in musical terms with the guitar, but this is another example of that, of where this person who is very familiar with the sword, he has mastered it to such a degree that he has attained a level of detachment from it. So he actually is able to part with it. He thinks, but the actual cycles of the sword, the cycles of violence around the sword are not. He cannot relinquish those as easily as he can relinquish the physical sword. So at one point he goes to throw. I'm getting a little bit rough on this point, but he goes to throw the sword like into the water, and or no, before that happens, the young disciple has a sword, and at one point she goes to hit. She goes to strike him with the sword, and she raises the sword to his neck, but he demonstrates courage and trust at the same time, where he actually does not protect himself. He just looks her in the eye. And something about his courage and his trust of the goodness within her heart, it actually keeps her from striking him. Where maybe if he would have been trying to defend himself, she would have been able to actually carry out that blow. But something about the power of his trust and his courage in recognizing the actual goodness in her stops her from hitting him with that sword. And I want to say that artistic portrayal right there might be the strongest the strongest approach that we can have as people in standing up to violence. In that there's something about human dignity and peace that is actually greater than violence, I believe. And if we could, I'm not saying any of us or even myself are actually brave enough or competent enough to truly stand on peace. But I'm just saying that with a conversation like this, I'm just maybe introducing the idea of peace and of peace and human dignity, and the posture of standing as a human being with dignity, as being the only thing that is greater than the power of the sword and violence and the firearm and so forth. There's I wanted to go. I know a few people in my life who have been really strong examples to me of simple dignity and just not entertaining the kind of game that a lot of things in our life can actually turn into games, as dark as that might sound. And in a certain way, violence is kind of like a game. And we all like play games in our house as kids, and then like when our father walks in, like there's something about his bearing that makes it time to put away games, and something about the awesomeness of our Father is enough to put away games. So I just want to say that I encourage all of us to maybe cultivate the strength to recognize and stand on the beauty and value of peace and human dignity, and just that simple posture as being our best and our first step in addressing the cycles and the implications of violence, because violence is something where it's like violence is very captivating, and there's something there's two things about violence, two words about violence that I'll introduce with this. There's something called hyperstophilia, and that is a human propensity to be engaged and aroused by violence, and I think we all have that to different degrees. And there's also something called necrophilia, which is like a fascination with death and dead things. And I think that us as human beings, we also have a that propensity where, like, if we see something that's dead, we have a inclination to stare at it and get lost inside of it. And I think that those two things, the hyperstophilia and the necrophilia, also play into our preoccupation with firearms and violence. But I just I just I'll leave it there. And I think that it's taken us a long time to get to this point where we're at. There's so much history and pain that has. Oh, well, what I was going with that necrophilia and the hyperstophilia is that when a fight breaks out somewhere, all of us are interested and keen to watch a fight. There's very few people who wouldn't be compelled. A fight commands attention. But there's something about a fight where it can be interesting, captivating, and even maybe stimulating to watch a fight. But if we're watching a fight in person, when the violence and the attention of the fight at one point actually somehow turn around and face us, it becomes something different altogether. And I don't think that any of us want to be the subject of violence. So with that, I want to say I offer this message with humility and gratitude to the Spirit of life. And I just hope that introducing this conversation can begin to spread awareness about some of the realities of violence and maybe a way forward, so that we can realize peace. And then the last thing I wanted to say is that for all of us who are living and healthy, or all of us who are living, whatever degree of peace we have or have realized in our life, none of us on this earth that has had and still has so much violence. I don't think that any of us get to wake up and walk the earth without different mercies and sacrifices that have been expended on our behalf, both what we are aware of and what we are not aware of, that facilitate and give us a window to exist on this earth. So I just want to say that when you have it in I just want to say we should maybe recognize and be thankful for the different mercies and sacrifices that have been expended on our behalf, that give us a window to exist with some level of peace and decency. And as we cultivate the spirit of peace and the confidence to stand on human dignity, we can maybe extend that to one another and create an atmosphere and a climate of peace, solidarity, and human love. So with that, I say peace, and for all the people working on artistry and expression, or just simply productivity and being a responsible person, keep up the work.